This is a bearded dragon, a staple of this channel in many homes across the entire world, maybe the most popular lizard that there is. What if I told you there's 5 lizards that are just way better? I really do think that there are 5 animals that might be better for a lot of people, and they just think they want a bearded dragon because that's what everybody has and that's what they've seen at their local pet store, that's what they've seen on Instagram or whatever. There are 5 better options that are very similar, so I'm not going to give you willy-nilly suggestions, no leopard geckos or chameleons or anything like that. These are all animals that are really similar. So let me put Diamond back and get number 5. And this is a frilled dragon, otherwise known as a frilled lizard. And let me tell you, I love this animal. Absolutely gorgeous, fantastic, and usually more chill than this. We actually had him out filming a lot of B-roll, and he's all pumped up right now, and he's getting all warm, and we fed him, and anyway, Tilly's been a really good boy. And what I love about frill dragons, well, many things. First of all, they have this really cool frill. So if you anger them or they feel defensive, in general, they're not going to do it much, but they'll frill that up and they'll look like a dinosaur. Tilly the frilly here only does that to me if I come up to the glass too fast and he's not expecting me, things like that. Now, as you can see, frill dragons are of a similar size. This is a full-grown male, but this is an Indonesian, so this is something to consider because there are 2 main types, Indonesians and Australians. Australians are more red and vibrant and have a more red neck and they're a little bit more showy. There goes Diamond running into the wall. But also they are bigger, quite a bit bigger. This animal here is a full-grown Indonesian, around the same size as a bearded dragon. If you want a Australian frill dragon, you're gonna get something quite a bit bigger. And what I love about them is they're super duper chill. I mean, he obviously came out of the gate, guns blazing, but that's not normal for frilled dragons, especially ones that are as well socialized. Now keep in mind, these animals, they do have these crazy teeth like you can see here. So they have like canine teeth that most lizards don't have, but they're not going to use them most of the time. Unless they use them on their prey, which is bugs mostly. In the wild, they might eat, small inverts, arthropods, insects like we feed them here, and maybe small lizards, but I mean, they're not as scary as you'd think. And that's a great issue because, I mean, most of the time, bearded dragons, it's tough to get them to eat their greens. And they're omnivores. So a bearded dragon being an omnivore, meaning they eat animal product or animal material, and they also eat vegetation, where this guy doesn't eat vegetation at all. He's mostly an insectivore, really a carnivore, because you could feed him, small lizards, but I don't recommend it. And these are arboreal, so you want to give them a little bit of height, and that's the thing with bearded dragons too. Most people think that they're not semi-arboreal, but they are. You'll find them on fence posts and up trees and stuff like that in their native range. So give these guys both a little bit of height. Now, obviously, this video isn't to disparage bearded dragons. I love them. I have one. He's the face of the channel. And the thing with bearded dragons is they're easy to keep because everybody has them, and all the things you need for them are in one place. At Chewy.com, of course. We've done Wickens Wicked Habitats, which is everything you need for bearded dragons in one spot. I'm not talking about a bunch of stuff that's put in a 40-gallon enclosure, which, by the way, isn't good for a bearded dragon, and then pushed out to the masses with a high markup. I hand-picked items on Chewy and put them all in the same spot, including the right size enclosure, which you won't find anywhere else. If you're not into bearded dragons, I've got some for leopard geckos, I've got one for ball pythons, for chameleons, crested geckos, you name it, we're gonna do it. And that takes the guesswork out and makes things super easy for you. Not to mention the rest of the website has a bunch of things that you might need. If you want a misting system, they got it. If you need food, they got it. Even live feeders. And finding feeders in the same spot as you buy your substrate or your supplements is just so fantastic and makes things so unbelievably easy. Plus, Chewy doesn't do any live animal sales, which puts them, in my opinion, above the rest. Plus, did I mention they're USARK Gold members? These are real reptile people for reptile people. Chewy.com, I'm proud to be working with them, and I'm proud of the Wickens Wicked Habitats that we made. The link is below, you're gonna love it. Now that Diamond's back, let's talk about something else that could replace a bearded dragon in your heart, and that is an Ackie monitor. Now, in my opinion, there's really 3 monitors that could replace a bearded dragon, because they're all from Australia, and they're all tiny monitors. Most people think monitor and they think of, Land Down Under, and they think of Joanna the Goanna, this giant thing. But Ackies are going to be about 24 inches, around that size, very similar to, well, as you can see in this footage here, and they come from the same part of the world. They come from Australia. Now, the other 2 species I was thinking about are Pilbara rock monitors, although around the same size, a little bit more expensive. And my favorite of the dwarf monitors, Kimberly rock monitors. Not my favorite monitor. I think, lace monitors are cooler, but they're way too big. And then there's those tree monitors that I can only dream about getting, because I definitely didn't do that this weekend. Anyway, moving back on to these amazing Acanthosora or Ackie monitors. And the reason that they call them Ackies is because of their Latin name, of course, and they like it hot. When I say hot, I don't mean bearded dragon hot, which is pretty freaking hot. I'm talking about 150 Fahrenheit plus for their basking spot. Some people say to keep them even hotter, 160, 170. Now, of course, take this with a grain of salt, do your own research, and always observe your animal. Mine, her name is Susan. She came from a neglected home. As you can see, her feet are not very feety. She's got 2 claws left. Most of her toes are basically gone because she had some bad sheds because of some bad husbandry before I got her. So, in general, you want to give them tons of room to dig because they love to dig. But mine I don't because she can't really dig. She's in a 5-foot enclosure, which is what I recommend, so maybe a little bit bigger than a bearded dragon because they move around a lot more than a beardie. But people love that. People love watching their animals move, and these guys are diurnal just like beardies, and they're out all the time. Personally, I love bearded dragons. I think they're awesome, but if I had to pick between the two, I'd probably get a yellow Ackie. Now there's red Ackies and yellow Ackies, and in general, yellows are a little bit easier to deal with. Reds are going to be a little bit more cantankerous. And they're carnivores, so you're only going to be feeding them, in the most part, insects, things like crickets and roaches and things like that. So you don't have to worry about salads if you're not into that. Moving on to number 3, another carnivore. Collared lizards. Okay, listen, I love so many animals. I say it, this one's my favorite, but collared lizards are like little Skittles that move. And I know I talk about dart frogs like that, but these are the arid version, okay? Because all of these animals like it a little bit more arid. We want to have the same sort of parameters as a bearded dragon. The difference with collared lizards is you can have that setup either be smaller or have multiple collared lizards in the same enclosure. All the banging in the back, by the way, is a tortoise. I'm really sorry about that, but I mean, it's kind of cute. And collared lizards in the wild will eat smaller collared lizards. So always, if you're going to cohab, do your due diligence. Females with maybe 1 male. I mean, just really research how to do it. Don't go willy-nilly, and make sure that you're putting adults together and not adults with babies. They'll eat them. But since you don't want to feed other collared lizards, what you want to feed is, well, crickets and mealworms and roaches and things like that. And I absolutely love mine. Now, I got a pair a little bit ago, and you can see how amazing this enclosure is. If you want to see the full video, my friend Cody at Herp Havoc came all the way down from the US and helped me make this enclosure. Leave a like. Let me know in the comments. I can make the video if you want. The problem is, with the pair that I got, one of them died almost immediately after getting, which is really sad. So I had Lizard and Tizzard, and now I just have Lizard. It's a lizard named Lizard. And these guys like it really warm too. Basking spots all the way up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. They're fantastic diurnal lizards, just like a bearded dragon. They're gonna act very similar, and especially when it comes to food time, they go crazy. Now keep in mind, they do grow rather quickly. I mean, mine I've only got since September, and they're growing like weeds basically. And they love to climb, so give them a rock background like the one you see here, or give them lots of perches and things like that. And they're gonna love to be basking most of the day, and then at night they're gonna hide under their water bowl or something else goofy like that. I love collared lizards. I want 2 more for this enclosure. They're blue, they're beautiful. There's a lot of different varieties of them, or locales I should say, but much smaller, up to 15 inches, including the tail, which is about half the size of a bearded dragon, maybe a little bit more than half the size. Now let's talk about number 2, Sudan plated lizards. And if you've been around for a while, I'm talking going back to 2019, I used to talk about Sudan plateds all the time because they're freaking cool. The difference between a bearded dragon and a Sudan plateds aren't that popular. Most people don't even know they exist, which is a freaking shame. They're a good size, very similar to a bearded dragon, but they look like they have plates of armor, and that's why I called mine Attila. Now, I will say, I had a Sudan plated for a while. It wasn't my cup of tea. She wasn't as handleable, although I've seen them very handleable, and they do have the same sort of diet as a bearded dragon. They like it a little bit warmer. They come from Sudan, which is part of Africa. Mine was just kind of boring, kind of laid around all the time, wasn't as fun as a bearded dragon, it wouldn't sit on my shoulder like this. But if you want something that's affordable, pretty easy to find, and is easy to care for in your living room, an amazing enclosure, very much like a bearded dragon, pseudo-plated lizards are kind of the cat's pajamas. And lastly on the list, probably no surprise, painted agamas. Listen, painted agamas are smaller bearded dragons. I mean, not really, they're not in the same genus and they're not from the same part of the world. They're from the Mediterranean, but they look super similar. Some people call them clown agamas because of the way that they look and their coloration, but I will say they have a very similar personality. I mean, imagine you took a collared lizard and a bearded dragon, you put them together and they made a baby. That is very similar to a clown agama, or painted agama, used interchangeably of course, and very similar diet too. I mean, of all the animals that you could have instead of a bearded dragon, this might be the best one. Again, smaller enclosure, or you just give them more room in the same footprint because they're smaller and they can move around a little bit more than bearded dragons. Let me know in the comments section below what you think the coolest bearded dragon alternative is, or if you just really love beardies, and that's what you're gonna get. As always, thanks for hitting like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Discounts on merch for those of you who join the Patreon, and one-on-ones. I love doing those. All that and more for as little as $1 a month, and I do videos on Mondays and Thursdays. So I'll see you in the next one.